Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Punattu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Sudesmati Purananam Alayam Karunalayam Namami Bhagavatpada Shankaram Lokashankaram Shankaram Shankaracharyam Keshavam Padarayanam Sutrabhashyakritam Vande Bhagavantau Punah Punah. So this particular Swapyayat, this particular sutra we are doing, in English, what we call sleep is, in Sanskrit it is called Swapiti or Swapaha. And in Sanskrit the word Swapaha or Swapiti means going back to oneself. In English the word sleep doesn't have the meaning. Sleep doesn't have the meaning. The word sleep in English doesn't mean going back to oneself. But in Sanskrit, the word swapaha, the word swapiti, etymologically, going by its derivation, it means going back to oneself. So, thoughts all disappear. When the thoughts all disappear, they can't disappear unto another thought, because all thoughts disappear. When thoughts disappear, matter disappears. Matter disappears means matter doesn't disappear unto matter. Matter disappears unto only the awareness, the observer. We always see the thoughts resolving unto the thinker, conscious being. Like the dream thoughts resolving unto the dreamer, the conscious being. It is our experience that perceptions and thoughts and memories, desires, pleasures, pains, just disappearing, going back, means they get resolved. They just fizzle out, they just resolve unto the conscious subject. Thoughts resolve unto the thinker. Thinker means consciousness. Thus, it is within our experience that matter resolves unto consciousness. It is within our experience that the matter resolves unto consciousness. Is not a belief, is not some inference, is not some speculation. Everybody does experience the thoughts going back to himself. We don't see our thoughts flying away. We don't see our thoughts flying away. We see our thoughts just resolving unto ourselves. Jahan se aate hain, from where they come, they go back. Because it's not possible for anything. It's not possible for the wave. If the wave comes from water, then it has to go back into water and nowhere else. Similarly, if thoughts are entertained by the thinker, the subject, let us say, all thinking is done by, it presupposes a conscious subject. So if the conscious subject alone is there behind all thinking, then definitely the thinking has to resolve into the conscious subject. So whatever is the beginning point, that is the culminating point. It is peculiar. Thoughts end where they begin. Thoughts end where they begin. So thoughts don't end somewhere else. That is why, right in this context, it's nice to understand one point. Even after living for 100 years, man just really ends where he began life. Doesn't make any progress. See, every morning the mind wakes up, runs about, and then resolves. And again, next day again, the mind wakes up and then plays about. And then again in the night it resolves. This repetition goes on for the whole life. And even on the last day the mind resolves. That's all. There is no progress made by man by sticking to this particular routine of waking up and sleeping and waking up and sleeping. There is no progress at all. The progress is always in the form of finding out where the mind wakes up and where. That's progress. Educating ourselves about where the mind begins and where the mind ends. That education can be called progress. And if there is no education, if there is no study, we don't study ourselves. If I don't study myself, what is happening to me? And studying myself means where my thinking is starting and where it is resolving. If I don't study myself, then I may stick to this routine, lifelong routine of waking up and doing some work and again falling up, waking, sleeping. By sticking to this routine alone, just by sticking to this routine alone, there is no progress. There is no progress. It means man ends life where he began life. Made no progress at all. Like the wave begins in water and ends in water. So the wave goes on, dying in water, being born in water, dying in water, being born in water, appearing in water, disappearing in water, appearing in water, disappearing in water. This is something that has been going on forever. And this is something that will go on forever. In fact, whatever is going on in this life, the same thing will go on next life. Next life is not going to be different from this life. Because next life also, man will wake up and then run about. He'll wake up and play with the objects forever. Why? And then when he gets tired, then again go to sleep. In this manner, there is no progress. But if the wave understands that I am beginning my life in water and also end my life in water. If the wave understands that I begin my life in water and end my life in water, therefore I am water, I am not different from water. That is fulfillment. Otherwise, it's a mere endless routine. It's an endless routine to be born and to be dying, wake up, sleep, wake, sleep, wake up, sleep, wake. In the morning one wakes up, in the night sleeps off, again wakes up, again sleeps off, again wakes up and again sleeps off. Wakes up, sleeps off, wakes up, sleeps off. Is what? Is a routine. Is a routine. And a being just sticking to a routine doesn't mean any progress. Routine is all right. It is there. I may go through routine. That's not bad. Going through routine is choiceless anyway. I have to go through this routine of waking up and sleeping and waking up and sleeping off. Similarly, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner is what? Routine. These are routines. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner. You go to even Gangotri, there also breakfast, lunch, dinner, breakfast, lunch, dinner. Therefore, similarly, action. Another routine. I work, I earn, work, earn, work, earn, work, earn, work, earn, work, earn is a routine in life. Or earn, enjoy, earn, enjoy, earn, enjoy, earn, enjoy. Paisa banao, kharch karo, make money, spend it, make money, spend it, make money, spend it is what? The routine. How long this routine has been going on? For ages. Now, if a person sticks to this particular routine of wake up and sleep off, work and earn and spend, breakfast, lunch, dinner, etc., these are all routines, universal routines. This sticking to this routine itself doesn't amount to any progress on the part of the jiva towards his goal of freedom. Jiva's progress is never in terms of material prosperity. बहुत बड़ी बात है. Jiva's progress, I should make progress in myself. I should progress in my vision of myself. Therefore, sticking to this routine itself doesn't amount to any progress. But go through the routine, because routine is something that's not man-made. These routines are all one finds oneself with. These are all there everywhere. You can't be a jiva without waking up, sleeping up, without eating, without action. And these are all there. But living with the routine, I have to study myself. The self-study. Studying one's existence. Like a physicist studies matter. Like a scientist studies the body. Each one studies. Like a diamond seller studies diamonds. There is a study. Everyone does some study, a close study. That becomes his topic. In that manner, this individual must study himself. So, studying oneself means observing from where the thoughts rise and where they disappear. That's all the study. Where does the thinking begin? Thinking begins. Before the thinking begins, is it nothing? Is there nothing? Before the thinking begins, is it nothing? before the thinking begins, what is there? Is it nothing? Before the thinking, after the thinking ends, what is there? Is it nothing? Before I begin my first thought in the waking mind, before I begin the thinking, what is it? Studying oneself is in the form of looking at a situation before the thinking begins and before and after the thinking ends. Therefore, if before, the logic says, if the observer is not there, if the conscious being were not there before the thinking begins, then there would be no knowledge of the beginning of thinking. Without seeing the beginning of thinking, I can't say that the thinking begins. I should see the beginning of something, then alone I can say it has a beginning. Therefore, we all know the thinking begins. We all know that thinking is not eternal. Thinking begins, thinking ends. Who doesn't know it? Who doesn't? For which you don't require education. Even a normal person, even a layman knows. Even a layman knows that the thinking begins and ends. When I wake up, thinking begins. And when I sleep, thinking ends. Or, when the thinking begins, I call it waking. When the thinking ends, I call it sleep. When the thinking begins, I call it waking. When the thinking ends, I call it sleep. And everybody knows that the thinking begins. That means the one who is aware of the beginning of thinking is there even before the thinking begins. And the one who is aware of the end of thinking is there even after the thinking ends. We are aware of the beginning and end of thinking. And therefore, we don't come with thinking. We don't go with thinking. It is not that we are born with the thing. It is not that we come with thinking and we disappear with thinking. No, we witness the beginning and end of thinking. We witness the beginning and end of thinking rather than we come with the thinking and disappear with thinking. So if we are aware of the beginning and end of thinking, then we are eternal. Therefore, eternity is not unevident. Eternity is not unevident. If non-eternity of thoughts is evident, if non-eternity of thoughts is evident, then the eternity of the one who sees the non-eternity is also evident. Therefore, one doesn't have to feel, how can you say there is eternity when everything is non-eternal? One says, when everything is non-eternal, where is eternity? It's too big a word. It's too much to say that we are eternal. It's a big word. It's too much for anybody to say that we are eternal. And it's too much for us to hear it. And it is too far, too much to accept it. It's absolutely absurd that we could be eternal. This is how man thinks. Even though he wants to be eternal, this is a peculiar thing. These human beings are very funny. All that he wants is happiness. And if I say you can get fullness, you can get happiness, he will say, I don't think so. I say, what you want is happiness. You should have at least the belief that you can get what you want. If happiness is what everybody wants, then definitely happiness should be available somewhere. If it is not available, then there would be no natural desire for happiness. In fact, in God's creation, you don't have a natural desire for something that is non-existent anyway. You can never have a natural desire for something that is non-existent. It's not possible. We always have natural desires for what is existent. We always have desires for what is existent. Natural desire. You see, natural desire means a desire over which I can't control it. I can't leave it. A desire I can't leave. That is called a natural desire. In other words, it's a universal, choiceless desire. We can't use our will to dismiss that desire. See the limitation of the will. See the limitation of the will. I can't use my will to brush aside my love for happiness. I can't brush aside my love for happiness, my love for freedom, my love for peace. This natural love for happiness, freedom, I can't brush aside through my will. Therefore, he is not will limited. He is not will limited. Will is limited. If will is something, mighty, will can be mighty only where you have, when it comes to actions. वहां पर भी बहुत गड़बड़ी है, उसके बारे में बाद में बात करेंगे. But right now we can understand one point. I can't use my will to brush aside my love for happiness. That means if I have such a natural love for happiness, then happiness must be available, must be there. And if it is not there in the objects, then it should be there in the very subject, nowhere else. If the happiness is not there in the objects, because we know it is not there in the objects, because no object can present itself as fullness. Every object is limited. An object can only provide a temporary sense pleasure, perhaps. It's not fullness. Because when a person says, I want to be happy, if we analyze that word happiness, what he wants is not really sense pleasure, he wants the fullness of his being. Did you hear? I want happiness means I want the fullness of my being. It doesn't mean I want some object which is full. He is not interested in a full object, because no object can be full. Even if he wants a full object, the love is only so that I can become full. The love is for the fullness of one's being. This is what the Yajnavalkya means when he says, Atmanastu kamaya sarvam premavati. It is not easy Vakya. People just think say like that. We have to understand the love for happiness. Happiness is not in the form of a thought. Atmanaha kamaha means the fullness of one's being. The fullness of one's being. Peacefulness of one's being. Freedom of one's being. He is not interested in a free thought. Because thought can never be. Thought is not freedom. Freedom of one's being. Therefore, if everybody is interested, if every living being craves for the fullness of his being, that is why in Sushupti you don't experience the full thought or full object. There is no object, there is no thought, and yet it is fullness. It is the fullness of being. It is not the fullness of thinking. It is fullness of being. We use the thinking to discover the fullness of being. The effort is not to achieve a full thought, but the effort of thinking we do to discover the fullness of the being, one's being. And therefore, if happiness is not there in the objects, then definitely it is there in the subject. Otherwise, I would not have had this natural desire for happiness. And natural means what a natural, my God. Every living being's heart is throbbing for only fullness. It is not possible, just to say, it is not possible to use our will against it. We only try to use our will for it. The very will is all the time willing for happiness, willing for freedom, willing for peace. We don't know what else to will for. Will can't, the very purpose, the very existence of the very will resolves in the achievement of fullness, because it has no purpose. Like in the deep sleep state, one stands a full being, therefore there is no will. There is no will for anything, because the will also resolves. The will also resolves. And what one experiences in deep sleep, what one stands as in deep sleep, is nothing but Sat Atma. Yada swapiti tada sata sampanno bhavati. You see how much this Shruti says. Here when a lion goes to sleep, it stands this up. Up, just like that, It picks up a few living things, the Shastra. Simhova, Vyagrova, Vrigova, Mashikova, Dagamshova. A lion goes to sleep. It loses its feeling that I am a lion and stands peaceful, the truth. A tiger falls asleep, ceases to be tiger, stands the truth. And a wolf falls asleep, free from the idea that I am a wolf, stands peaceful, the truth. A mosquito also falls asleep, ceases to be a mosquito, and stands the truth. Dagamsha, a wasp. Dagamsha means wo kaatne wali. It's called Dagamsha. A wasp falls asleep, ceases to be wasp, stands peaceful, therefore stands the truth. Therefore, in sleep is not a state of darkness. Sleep is a state of one's Swarupa, one's actuality. It is a state of one's being. It is not a state of thinking. There is only a thinking and being. There is a state of thinking. There is a state of being with thinking, and there is a state of being without thinking. There is a state of one's being with thinking called the waking and the dream. And deep sleep is a state of being without thinking. There is a being with thinking and being without thinking, rather than our being alternating with non-being. Being doesn't alternate with non-being because we have no experience in life. There is no instance in which the presence is alternating with absence. When you say the presence of pot alternates with the absence of the pot, that's wrong. There is only clay with the pot and clay without being the pot. There is a continuity of the clay. Even though we think in terms of presence of pot, absence of pot, presence of pot, absence of pot. But in actuality, it is not present, now presence, now absence, now presence, now absence. No. Now clay looking a pot, now clay remaining clay. Now clay looking a pot, now clay remaining clay. Thus, there is no alternation fundamentally. There is a continuity fundamentally. Fundamentally, there has to be continuity. Without the continuity, you can't even register the alternation. To register the alternation, presence now, absence now, presence now, absence now, even to witness that alternation, there should be continuity. There should be the being, the witness, the consciousness to register that alternation. And therefore, this particular verse is coming up with a nice thing, that is, hey, that your mind goes back to yourself, shows that the source of the universe is yourself, is consciousness. Because the mind doesn't disappear unto matter. Mind does not disappear unto matter. Mind disappears unto its source, the conscious thing, because thoughts all take place in awareness. Thoughts take place in awareness. Therefore, the thoughts disappear into awareness. Are you able to follow? Therefore, we are not experiencing our mind disappear. We as individuals, we are not experiencing ourselves going back to matter. Body goes back to matter, all right, that's different. But we as conscious individuals, we don't experience ourselves going back to matter. Every night we experience ourselves going back to our own swarupa of being Chaitana, of being the silent being, silent being. Silentness is felt by the being. Table doesn't experience silentness. It's a silentness. Suppose when you go to a forest, everything is silent. But that silentness is not the quality of the objects that's felt in me. Because the existence of the objects also is felt in me. My existence I feel in myself, the existence of the world also I feel in myself, and therefore the silence is not the quality of the objects. Silence is the quality of the being. To be silent is called silence. If silence is the quality of the object, then I should have another sense organ to see the sense silence. I see the form. I have eyes to see the form, ears to hear the sounds, sense of taste to taste the object, sense of touch to touch the object, sense of smell to smell the object. What sense organ do we have to perceive? Silence. I don't have a sense organ to perceive silence. We don't need it. Why? Because silence is not a sense object. If silence is not a sense object, then Shanti is not a quality of sense object. That means what I crave for is not the quality of sense objects. What everybody craves for is not a quality of the sense objects. And therefore, when man becomes, therefore, Sushupti is indeed, it is silentness of our being. Silentness. That is why one craves to be silent. The love to go to sleep is nothing but the love to be silent. The love to be silent means, the love to be quiet means, the love to be peaceful means, the love to drop all the noise. What happens in sleep is only all the noise resolves and what remains is Shant. So we are not bringing about silence. Sleep doesn't bring about silence. Sleep doesn't bring about peace. Sleep doesn't bring about serenity. Sleep only facilitates the resolution of noise. When the noise resolves, what is there? There is only Shanti, and that's not a thought. So Shanti is not a thought that can be born. Shanti is not a thought that can resolve. In fact, noise is born in silence and resolves in silence. Therefore, silence is the material for noise. In fact, silence is the truth of noise. Silence is the truth of noise. That's why Vedanta can say the silence, Paramatma, Brahmani is the truth of the whole chaotic world, this noise, this sansara. Brahman is the truth of the noise, means silence is the truth of the noise. Thus, the Shruti is drawing man's attention to his own experience called deep sleep in order to help him understand that the source of everything is not some matter. The source of everything is the Chaitana. And that is where we are. We have seen the first 3 lines. Tadeva Shabdavacham Karanam Prakritya Shruyate Yatra Etat Purushaha Svaviti Nama Tata Saumya Tata Sampanno Bhavati Swam Apito Bhavati Tasmadenam Svapiditya Chakshate Swam Hi Apito Bhavati iti. Up to that we have seen. This sleeper is called Swapiti. Peculiar. Swapiti. Why? He goes back to himself. Swam, apne aap ko, apito bhavati, wo chale jata hai. In sleep, one goes back to oneself. Okay. Yesha Shruti. Now, continue the next. This particular Shruti Vakya, this particular statement given by Chandogya Shruti, Yesha Shruti, says, Swapiti Chetat Purushasya. Swapiti, this name, Swapiti, sleeper. In English, the sleeper. In Sanskrit, Swapiti. If you refer to the person, he is called sleeper. And the Sanskrit word, Swapiti. If you refer to sleep, in English it is sleep. And in Sanskrit, it is Swapaha. If you refer to the person, he is a sleeper, he is peaceful. If you refer to the sleeper, the Sanskrit word, swapiti. If you refer to sleep, then swapa. Both have the etymology. Swapiti means the one who has gone back to oneself. Swapaha means a state of going back to oneself. But itna hi farak hai. Swapaha means is a state of going back to oneself. Swapiti means, because swa means oneself. Apa means to resolve. Swapaha means going back to oneself. Swapiti means the one who has gone back to himself. So, swapiti tyetat purushasya, this human beings, this jiva, purusha means jiva. In Vedanta, purusha means jiva. Sahasra Sirsha Purusha, Sahasraksha Sahasrapad. Purusha Shabda does not have any human individual. In fact, Vedanta doesn't talk. Vedanta talks to human beings about a jiva. Because Vedanta can't talk to a cow. But Vedanta talks to a human being. You have to listen. Vedanta talks to a human being because he is the adhikari. Cow is not an adhikari. Cow can't come to Ramana Kendran. Cow can't go to Gurukula. Cow can't listen. Adihi Bhagavo Brahmeti, cow can't come. The student is always the one who can understand. Therefore, a human being is a student. So Vedanta addresses the human beings about the truth which is shared by all living beings. So Purusha is a part of teaching. So Purusha refers to a conscious being which is common to all living beings. Man is taught, only man is taught the truth of all living beings. Thus, there is a difference between adhikari and topic. Adhikari is a human being. The topic is Purusha, which is every living being. Therefore, here it is said, Swapiti Chetat Purushasya Loka Prasiddham Nama. This is a well-known name. Loka Prasiddham Nama. The identity. When a person goes to sleep, we call him a sleeper. It's sleep. It is sleep. In Sanskrit, Swapiti or Swapaha. Now, is sleep popular or not? Is sleep popular or not? It is Loka Prasiddham. The most well-known state is sleep. It is Loka Prasiddham. Like Jagrat is Loka Prasiddham. Swapna is Loka Prasiddham. Sleep is Loka Prasiddham. Loka Prasiddham means it is Prasiddham in the realm of the jivas. Every jiva has Jagrat, Swapna and Sushupti. Therefore, Loka Prasiddham Nama Nirvakti. The Vedanta Shastra etymologically explains away this well-known state called sleep. Nirvachan deti, Nirvakti. Vedanta Shastra defines sleep etymologically. When it defines sleep etymologically, it is called Swapiti Swam Apito Bhavati. It's a state of going back to oneself. Okay. One is the word's etymology. Just because the word is swapaha etymologically means going back to oneself, does it clinch that I go back to myself? No. A word has to become meaningful in the light of the Anubhava. If I am experiencing myself going back to myself, then the word swapa is valid. Not only the word swapa means going back to oneself. In fact, everybody experiences going back to oneself. From a state of ceasing to be a thinker means, instead of thinking, I keep quiet. That is called going back to myself. Instead of hating, I don't hate. That is going back to myself. Instead of being angry, I cease to be angry. That is called going back to oneself. Instead of being greedy, I cease to be greedy. I cease to be angry. I cease to be greedy, angry, etc., etc. And similarly, I cease to be a desirer. I cease to be a desirer. That is going back to myself. I cease to be fearing. That is going back. In fact, in sleep, I cease to be an angry person. I cease to be greedy. I cease to be jealous. I cease to be a desirer. I cease to be a complex-ridden individual. I cease to be emotional. Emotional means, emotionally immature, etc. I cease to be impulsive. I cease to be emotional. I cease to be greedy. Cease to be desire. Ceasing is going back to myself. What else? When I cease to be all these, if I cease to be impulsive, etc., I am peaceful. That's called going back to oneself. Therefore, our experience is telling that in deep sleep, we don't become something else. We cease to be. We cease to be what we are not. We cease to be what we are not. And we remain what we are. We cease to be. In fact, nobody can cease to be what he is. You can only cease to be what you can cease to be. If I can cease to be, then what I can cease to be can never be myself. What I can cease to be is something other than myself. What I can cease to be has to be other than myself. Therefore, in ceasing to be what I am not, I remain what I am. In ceasing to be what I am not, I remain what I am. Therefore, even though the language is remaining what I am, but actually what has happened is ceasing to be what I am not. Ceasing to be what I am not. Thus, our experience clearly tells us that sleep is not a state of darkness. Sleep is not a state of some inexplicable thing. It is a well-known state in which I cease to be a form. I cease to be a desirer. I cease to be fearful. I cease to be incomplete. All these feelings, that make me cry the whole waking, during the whole waking hours. The whole waking state I am depressed. Something or other. This whole thing I cease to be and I remain peaceful. No ordinary state. And therefore, Loka Prasiddham Nama Nirvakti. Thus, the experience is proving that we go back to ourselves. And the well-known word Swapaha also is in keeping with that experience. That is also etymologically meaning going back to us. Thus we are through with this sentence. Now please see, Swashabdena, by the word Swa. Swashabdena. Iha, in this context, Atma Uchyate. Here Swa means the unlimited being. What cannot further resolve, that is the truth. Like the wave can resolve unto water. Water cannot resolve unto wave. Water remains as water, but between the two, wave can resolve, water cannot resolve. Therefore, water is Atma. The unresolvable is the Atma and the resolvable is a creation. Therefore, the word Swa here means Atma. Why does Bhagavan say here? Why does Shankaracharya write this word Swa? Because Swa means, Bandhu, Bandhava, etc. Swa also means relations, relatives. I go back unto my relatives now. Swashabda here, that's Swa, because even the body is, the children are called my Swa, my Bandhu Bandhavas are called Swa, this body also is Swa, the mind also is Swa, the senses are also called Swa, in fact my money also is Swa. But in sleep we don't go back to money, go back to the body, go back to the mind, go back to the relations. In fact we go back to the self. Atma. Atma here means really what cannot? That which is pervasive of all thoughts, and that also which survives all thoughts, that has its own definition, Atma. Chetanam. The truth. So, Swashabdena iha Atma uchyate. Next line. Yaha prakritaha. The topic on hand. Yaha, jo, prakritaha. In Chandogya Upanishad, 6th chapter, the topic is Sat. In Chandogya Upanishad, in the 6th chapter of Chandogya Upanishad, the topic is Sat. Because Uddalaka teaches Shvetaketu about Sat, by knowing which you come to know everything. Clear? This is called Prakritaha, the topic. Yaha Prakritaha. What is Prakritaha? What is the topic? Satchabda Vachaha. The sense of the word Sat. The topic here is the meaning of the word Sat. Sat is a word which has a meaning, and that meaning is not another word. The meaning of a word is not another word. That meaning of the word Sat is the material for the whole Jagat. Like, so Ghata. And then I say the clay is the Sat for the pot. Clay is the Sat for the pot. So the word Sat refers to the clay, which is not again another word. That is Artha. Satchabda Vacha. That is why Bhagavan says Satchabda Vacha. The topic here is not the Satchabda. The topic here is Satchabda Vacha. The sense of the word Sat. Did you hear? Oh, Hari Mataji. He's not saying Sat, he's saying the sense of the word Sat. That sense of the word Sat, it should be a fact, evident. If it is not something that is evident, I can't use a word for the unevident, then it loses the identity of being a word. Then it becomes only paribhasha, it becomes apartham, has no meaning. A word whose sense is not evident, it is a meaningless word. It has no meaning because that meaning is not evident. There is a word, I don't have, there is no meaning. Why? Because it's not evident. So the meaning, that's why it's called Satchabda Vacha. Tam, that, usko. The sense of the word Sat, usko, apito bhavati. A human being, this jiva goes back. Jiva goes back to the sense of the word Sat. Jiva goes back to the Sat means it goes back to the sense of the word. It goes back to Sat, which is the material for everything. Therefore, apito bhavati, api gato bhavati. What does it mean, apito bhavati? Api gato bhavati. Goes back, it is false. Apitaha is derived from the dhatu in. Api gataha is derived from the dhatu gam. Both are in the sense of going. Api, when you use the word, when you prefix the word api and then gam, it becomes resolution. Going means, gachati means, just a little, just some vakaran mein theek hai. Gachati means you go. Gachati, you go. Api gachati is always. When the wave is traveling, I say, tarangaha gachati. Tarango gachati. The wave is traveling. And supposing the wave disappears and becomes placid water, then I say, tarangaha api gachati. Another dhatu, tarangaha eti. The wave is traveling. And when the wave disappears, we say, appyeti. Tarangaha appyeti means lost. Therefore, here Bhashyakara says, apito bhavati, api gato bhavati, ityartaha. This is the meaning. When we say swamapito bhavati, when we say man goes back unto himself, do you know what we mean? Because the topic is Sat. Man going back to himself means man going back to the Sat, the source of the whole universe. Going back to the source of the mind means going back to the source of the universe. Because the source of the mind is the source of the world. We can't have one source for the mind and another source for the world. If it is true, just a simple logic, if we can capture. Really, it makes sense. Hey, if the mind has one source and the universe has another source, then there can never be an unsnappable relation between thought and object. But there is an unsnappable gauna ekatva. There is an unsnappable. They both are related. Thought and object are related. If thought has one source, object has another source, why should they have an unsnappable relation? It is an unsnappable relation. Meaning, thought cannot exist without pertaining to object, nor can object exist except as an object of thought. How can the eyes exist without pertaining to forms? And how can the forms exist without being related to the eyesight? So the senses and sense objects have an unsnappable relation. Therefore, when I transcend one, the other, I transcend two. When one is there, the other is there. When one is not, the other is not. Therefore, this particular unsnappable relationship, Shastra calls Gauna Ekatvam. Gauna Ekatvam means an unsnappable relation. If it is true that the universe has one source and the senses have another source, the universe has one source, the senses have another source, the mind has another source. If that is true, if the faculties have one source and the objects of faculties have another source, then there would not have been an unsnappable relation between the faculties and the universe. That's something I have to explain. I can't say that has one source, this has another source, and then keep quiet. A mere conclusion doesn't mean anything, because that conclusion throws up many questions. Hey, if there are two different sources, then why there should be an unsnappable relation? And therefore, when we say man goes back to himself, Bhashyakara says it means he goes back to Sat. He goes back to Sat, the source. यः प्रकृतः सच्छब्दवाच्यः तमपीतो भवति अपिगतो भवति इत्यर्थः. Just another few minutes. Apipurvasya, a root having api as its prefix, a root like gum, a root like in, a root which means going, a root, a verb which means going. The verb of going with a prefix of api means to dissolve. Api purvasya, etehe, etehe means eti, that is in dhatu. Layarthatvam, meaning laya, prasiddham is well known. The verb of going with the prefix of api means resolution. It is not traveling, it is laya. Is it going back? In fact, where the idea of going resolves, that is not going back. Kitchani hai, the contrast between man's jiva's thinking and the truth Rama. I say I go back to myself. In fact, going back to myself means becoming free from the idea of going and coming. Becoming free from the idea of going and coming is called going back to oneself. And therefore, here it says, Abhipurvasya etehe layarthatvam prasiddham. But is it used by the Shruti? Does the Shruti use the verb of going with api in the sense of laya? Yes. Where? It is said, Prabhavapyayau hi bhutanam, Mandukya Shruti. So many, not one. Hey, the Atma, the one in sleep, the being in sleep, is the source of creation and apyaya and the point of resolution. Prabhavapyayau hi bhutanam iti utpatti pralayoho prayoga darshanat. Mandukya Upanishad does point out that the Sat, the being in sleep, the Advitiya being is definitely the source and the culmination, source and the resolving point of everything. In that sense it is used. Deep sleep state is not experienced as one of the three states. Sleep, when it is experienced, it is not experienced as one of the three states. I interpret sleep from the waking as one of the three states, but sleep is not experienced as one of the three states. So it is Advitiya. In sleep, you don't experience silence, you don't experience deep sleep as one of the three states called, this is sleep, that is waking, that is dream. Sleep is not anubhavam, is not experienced as one of the three states. In fact, it is experienced as Advitiya. No reference to the second. It is only from the Jagrat point of view we look back at Sushupti, and misinterpret. That is called the error about the Swarupa. That which is Advitiyam is looked upon as one of the three states. It's like the wave, interpreting placid water as one of the two. One is the wave, the other is water. But actually the water is not one of the two. The source cannot be one of the two. Source cannot be one of the three. And therefore Sushupti as Anubhava Siddham is Advitiyam. And within that Advitiyam is felt the second. Within the Advitiyam is felt the third. Within the Advitiyam is the whole universe. Therefore there is no Anubhava of the Sushupti as one of the three. Sushupti is experienced as Advitiyam, about which there is an error in the waking, that it is one of the three. But it is not one of the three. And therefore, That Advitiyam is looked at by the Mandukya Upanishad as Prabhavan Apyaya. That is the source of the creation. That is the resolving point of the creation. Thus, Shruti does use the verb go with the prefix api in the sense of resolution. You can put a mark there. We'll continue it later. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnaha Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. So we'll come